Once I was diagnosed with the cancer, this pathway was laid out in front of me, which was crystal clear. You'll be off work for a year. You will be 6 months of intensive chemo. You will be 6 months of recovery. I knew my 2014 was going to be episodic and totally different. And it worried me. I thought, what am I going to do about this show? It became a no-brainer to turn the exhibition into a fundraiser for the Peter Mac Foundation. And to celebrate them, I wanted to give back. About a year ago, we decided, Keith and I, that we would move to a bigger gallery premises, and we'd incorporate the gallery and the studio and our home all into the one space.
Well, the family unit is basically Tim and myself, and Tim's two daughters. He's the biological father from his marriage to Kara Lee. Lillian is 18 and Mayrose is 16. But I always remember the thing that amazed me, the very first line he said about his family, because I said to him, I assume therefore your kids will be your priority. And Tim said, no, my relationship is my priority, because if I'm happy within my relationship, my kids are happy. I'd say I'm particularly aware, obviously, as the chief carer, of the loneliness, his loneliness, in going through this treatment, because he gets up at 7 o'clock, having got up at 4, come back to sleep for an hour. He takes the dog for a walk. He can't go for coffee at 4, but he'll go for coffee at 6. That intense loneliness that we can't share. It impacts all the time, constantly. And the tiredness. He will just feel exhausted after 3 or 4 hours. For me personally, that's the hardest thing to take, to see a man that's so full of energy and would do things and clamber up ladders and run around and do this, and he'd have done 5 things in the time one person would take. And seeing his frustration is the saddest thing that I feel towards what the impact of the cancer has been.
Tim was diagnosed with mantle cell lymphoma after a lymph node biopsy. Mantle cell lymphoma is a subtype of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Patients with mantle cell lymphoma, up until 15-20 years ago, they were considered incurable.
It's not one of the more common lymphomas that we see, and we treat it aggressively. So for Tim, that meant cycles of chemotherapy given every 3 weeks. He needed to understand what that meant for his life. Then he needed to know what the success of the treatment was.
The chemotherapy he's put on is one of the most intense, most toxic chemotherapies that you can have. It's referred to as the Rolls-Royce of chemotherapy. And it's not because you get the smoothest ride, but it's just that, it's the deluxe.
I think I was a little bit naive at the start, thinking, oh, okay, well, if you get cancer, you have some chemo treatment. As it turned out, I was stage 4 by that point, which meant it was through my bone marrow, it was in all my lymph glands, and it would mean a 6-month intensive chemo treatment. It continues to change and shift. As I go through another round of chemo, and another range of side effects come about. And they're different and they're varying. Some are humorous and some are not, The tingling in my hands drives me nuts. I feel like I've got closed pegs on them. But it doesn't stop me. The stuttering that comes, that I've never had, is, the kids laugh at it.
One of the things when you're diagnosed with a cancer is that suddenly your life goes out of control. And for some of our patients, and particularly for Tim, I think it was important that there was some aspects of his life he could still control, and of course his work is so important to him.
When I'm in there and I've got chemo out of one arm and I've got my drawing and I'm sitting under a window, and it raises everyone's spirits. It gets me out of the bed. You can do a lot in this context. You don't have to just watch the telly or lie on the bed. And I think if I wasn't producing in the hospital, I think these chemo rounds would be far worse. Predominantly, the drawing is the most calming in the hospital, because it's repetitiveness and the patterning within it mirrors when you've plugged up to a machine and they say this chemo is going to go for 12 hours, and you kind of go, that's a long time. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to draw. I'm going to try to kill 3 or 4 hours. The idea of producing rug designs and large floor rugs based on these patterns that had been generated in the work kind of just evolved, but through friends we were able to get these rugs made, which is amazing. So there's now 6 rugs being made that will form part of the body of the exhibition.
The underlying statement is about inspiration. It's about the concept of illness does not stymie creativity. You can still be creative.
I'm hoping to give people ingredients or processes to get through changes, you know, and to find ways to continue to make and create in a way that is empowering to them and builds a strength in a time that might not be so good for others. For me, I feel like I've shifted so much. I feel like I'm a stronger person, a nicer person, a better educator. I think it's going to be hard for me not to be grateful for this process and how it's moved myself. And I hope the work stands to that too.